Listen, something is wrong with this house. People walk in and come out saying they heard their own voices whispering behind them. Doors don't just close, they exhale, like something living is inside. And last night, at exactly 3:12 a.m., a shadow moved across the hallway, even though the lights were off and no one was home. So, tell me, what do you think is hiding here? Before we begin, make sure you hit subscribe. Turn on the bell. You don't want to miss more real horror stories like this. The year was 1971. The Perron family moved into an old farmhouse in Harrisville, Rhode Island. The father was Roger Perron. The mother was Carolyn Perron. They had 5 daughters. The girls were young and full of energy. They were excited to explore every corner of the house. The house looked nice. It was big. It had old wooden floors, big rooms, a forest all around it. The walls creaked with every step. The windows rattled in the wind. At first, it seemed charming. The family thought they had found the perfect home. At first, everything seemed fine. The girls ran through the hallways. They played in the yard. They climbed trees and explored the old barn. The family tried to make it a happy home. They painted the rooms. They fixed the floors. They made it cozy. But soon, strange things began to happen. The first signs were small. A broom disappeared from the kitchen one night. The next morning, it was back. Not in the same spot, but leaning against the wall across the room. No one had moved it. Then, other small things started to happen. Footsteps in the hallways at night, even when everyone was asleep. Doors that creaked open by themselves. A soft cold wind would blow through rooms with no windows open. The children began to whisper to each other. "Did you hear that?" they asked. But none of them could explain it. Sometimes, there was a smell in the house. A smell of rotten flesh. It appeared in one room, then vanished. The family tried to clean it. Opened the windows. Spray air freshener. Nothing worked. And then, it came back again. The children began to feel uneasy. One of the daughters, while trying to sleep, felt someone tugging on her legs. She opened her eyes, and no one was there. Another daughter woke up to see a shadow standing at the end of her bed. She screamed. But when her parents ran in, the room was empty. Voices appeared. Soft whispers in the hallways. Not one voice, sometimes many. Voices that did not belong to anyone in the house. The family tried to ignore them. They said it was the wind. They said the house was old. Maybe old wood was creaking. Maybe it was just their imagination. But the strange things kept happening. Objects moved. Furniture shifted slightly. Pictures fell off the walls. One day, a pile of dirt appeared in the kitchen. No one had put it there. No one had touched it. It just appeared. Pets acted strangely. The family's dog refused to enter certain rooms. It growled at empty corners. The cat hissed at walls where nothing could be seen. Roger tried to stay calm. He reassured his family. "It's just an old house," he said. But even he began to feel uneasy. Sometimes he felt cold drafts in rooms that had no windows. Sometimes he felt eyes on him, staring when no one was there. The family started to notice patterns. Most strange things happened at night. Most activity focused on the bedrooms and the hallways. Carolyn, the mother, felt it most of all. She felt watched. She felt someone wanted her out. She felt a presence that hated her. Years before the Perrons moved in, many people had lived there. The house had history. Many families. Many deaths. Some by accident. Some tragic. Some sad. Some sudden. The land was old. The house was almost 200 years old. People had lived there and died there. Some never left, at least, not inside their memories. The Perrons did not know all of this when they bought the house. They only saw a house and a promise of peace. But the house, it remembered. It remembered everyone who ever lived and died there. And now, it had noticed them. The family was trapped. They could not leave yet. They were too attached to the house. They were too afraid of the unknown. Every day, they lived with small scares that slowly grew into something bigger. And every night, the house reminded them that it was alive. The Perrons had moved into a house that chose its victims. They were about to learn that some memories of the past do not stay buried, and some spirits do not forgive. The Perrons thought they were moving into a normal old house. But the house had a story. A story most people did not know. Long before the Perrons arrived, many families had lived there. Some stayed for years. Some stayed only for a short time. Some left because the house made them uneasy. Some never left, in the way that really matters. The land itself was very old. Almost 200 years old. People had built the house. People had died there. Some were buried nearby. Some had accidents. Some had tragedies that were never spoken about. Every corner of the land seemed to hold memories. The worst story was about a woman named Bathsheba Sherman. She lived on the land long ago. People said she practiced dark magic. People said she cursed the land. She was accused of evil things, and she died there. But some say her spirit never left. People whispered about her. They said she had hated children. They said she had sworn that the land would always have suffering. After Bathsheba, the house seemed to take a life of its own. Families who lived there said strange things happened. Furniture moved by itself. Objects vanished. Footsteps echoed in empty rooms. Whispers came from nowhere. People said the house was haunted. Some families left in fear. Others stayed and suffered quietly. Even the local townspeople knew something was wrong. They told the Perrons to be careful. They warned that the house was not safe. They told stories of families who had run from it. They spoke of sudden deaths. They spoke of doors that opened and closed on their own. But the Perrons, they wanted to believe in their new home. They wanted to believe the stories were just old myths. At first, the Perrons tried to ignore the warnings. But soon, the signs could not be ignored. Carolyn, the mother, began feeling uneasy. She felt watched in rooms that seemed empty. Shadows moved in the corner of her eyes. Cold air would rush past her, even in warm rooms. She began having nightmares that felt real. The children also noticed. They whispered about shadows. They said things moved by themselves. One girl told her mother that she saw a dark woman standing at the end of her bed. Another girl said she heard someone calling her name, softly, in the night. Even Roger, the father, could feel something was wrong. He tried to stay calm. He told the family it was just an old house. He told them to ignore the noises. But even he felt the cold drafts. He felt eyes on him, watching him from empty rooms. He could not explain the sounds he sometimes heard in the hallways when no one else was awake. The house seemed to remember everything. It remembered the tragedies. It remembered Bathsheba. And now, it had new residents to watch. The activity seemed focused on Carolyn. She felt it most of all. She felt a presence that hated her, that wanted her family gone. Strange things began to happen more often. Doors would slam on their own. Furniture would shift. Objects disappeared. At night, whispers were louder. Shadows became clearer. The children were afraid to sleep alone. Even in the daytime, the house felt heavy. The air felt cold and thick, as if someone was always near. The Perrons could not leave. They had already moved in. They wanted a home. They wanted peace. But the house, it did not care. It had a past. And the past was very angry. Some nights, the family would sit together in the living room. They would hold hands and try to feel safe. But even then, small things happened. A window would rattle. A floorboard would creak. A whisper would float through the air. They could not escape it. They could not ignore it. The house was teaching them a lesson. It was showing them that the past never really dies. That memories can linger. That anger can survive for generations. The Perrons had moved into a house with a memory. And that memory was not kind. As the days passed, the strange activity in the house grew stronger. It was no longer just objects moving or whispers in the hallways. It was focused. It had a target. Carolyn, the mother, felt it first. She would wake up in the middle of the night, shivering. She felt a presence in her bedroom, standing close, watching her. Sometimes, she could hear soft breathing, even though she was alone. The children noticed it too. They would tell their mother, "Mom, someone is in my room." They said shadows moved around their beds. They said whispers called their names. Carolyn tried to comfort them. She told them it was nothing. She told herself it was nothing. But she could feel the house was alive. It hated her. It wanted her gone. Strange events became more aggressive. One night, Carolyn felt hands on her shoulders pressing her down. She screamed. No one else was in the room. Another night, she woke to see a shadow standing at the foot of her bed. It was tall, dark. She could feel its anger. Roger, her husband, tried to help. He moved things around. He tried to calm the house. He prayed. He tried to protect his family. But nothing worked. The children were terrified. They refused to go to certain rooms alone. Sometimes, they would hide under their blankets for hours, waiting for the sun to rise. Carolyn became the focus of the entity's attacks. It was not just shadows and whispers anymore. It started to touch her. It would pull her hair. It would slap her face. It would make her feel like she could not move. The family realized this was beyond normal. They were living with a spirit, a very angry spirit. The Perrons reached out for help. They called priests. They called investigators. But even they were cautious. The house was strong. It was powerful. It did not want them there. Some nights, Carolyn would wake up covered in bruises. She could not explain them. She could not understand how it was happening. The family was scared. The house had claimed her, in its own way. Even during the day, the presence lingered. The family felt watched. The shadows moved. The whispers followed them from room to room. The entity was patient. It wanted control. It wanted fear. And it had chosen Carolyn as its focus. The Perrons began to understand one terrifying truth. The house did not just want them to leave. It wanted to break them. It wanted to dominate their lives. It wanted to haunt them, forever. The family tried to protect each other. They held hands at night. They stayed together in rooms. But the entity was clever. It learned their routines. It knew their fears. And each night, the attacks became more frightening. Carolyn, the mother, became the symbol of the house's hatred. The entity wanted her broken. It wanted her scared. It wanted her family to feel powerless. And so, the Perrons faced the most terrifying truth of all. They were living in a house that did not just remember the past. It was alive. It was angry. And it was focused on them, especially Carolyn. The Perrons were desperate. They had tried everything they could think of. They prayed. They moved furniture. They tried to ignore the spirits. But nothing worked. The house continued to terrorize them. Shadows followed them. Whispers called their names. Cold air rushed past them in empty rooms. The entity had chosen Carolyn, and it would not stop. Finally, they reached out for help. They called Ed and Lorraine Warren. The Warrens were famous paranormal investigators. They had dealt with many haunted houses. The Perrons hoped they could stop the evil once and for all. When the Warrens arrived, they immediately felt the house's presence. The air was heavy. The floors creaked under invisible footsteps. Lorraine could feel something watching her. She told the family, "This house is not normal. It is very old and very angry." The Warrens began their investigation. They examined every room. They took notes. They said prayers. They brought holy objects into the house. But the spirit was clever. It did not show itself immediately. Instead, it started small. Objects moved slightly. Shadows flickered across the walls. Whispers became louder. The family could hear the entity laughing softly, as if mocking them. Then, the Warrens decided to perform a séance. They wanted to communicate with the spirit. They wanted to understand it. They wanted to make it leave. Everyone sat in the living room. Candles flickered. The air grew colder. The shadows seemed to move closer. At first, nothing happened. Then, a chair tipped over by itself. A cold wind blew through the room. The children screamed. Carolyn felt a hand grab her arm. She tried to pull away, but it was like something invisible was holding her in place. Lorraine warned everyone to stay calm. Ed began to pray aloud. The entity responded. The candles went out. Darkness filled the room. A terrifying laugh echoed through the hallways. The walls shook. Pictures fell off the walls. The air became so cold that everyone could see their breath. The entity was angry. It did not want to leave. It did not want to be disturbed. It wanted fear. It wanted control. Carolyn screamed. The children cried. Even the Warrens were alarmed by the intensity of the presence. Then, something even more terrifying happened. The spirit lifted a heavy chair and threw it across the room. It narrowly missed Roger. The room was filled with noise and chaos. The family realized that they were dealing with something beyond their understanding. The Warrens tried to continue the séance. They called out the name of the spirit. They asked why it was haunting the house. But the entity would not answer politely. It laughed. It shouted. It made strange noises that no one could understand. Finally, the Warrens decided to end the séance. They told the family to leave the room. They tried to contain the spirit using prayers and holy objects. Slowly, the house calmed down. The shadows retreated. The whispers faded. The air felt warmer. But the family knew the truth. The house was still dangerous. The spirit was still there. It had been temporarily subdued, but it was not gone. It had marked the Perrons. It had chosen them. And it would always watch. The Perrons realized they had survived something terrifying. But they also understood that the battle was far from over. The entity had shown its power. It had shown its anger. And it had shown its ability to reach inside the family and target the one it hated most, Carolyn. Even after the Warrens left, the Perrons knew the house was still dangerous. The presence had not gone. It had not forgiven them. Shadows moved in empty rooms. Whispers floated through the hallways. Cold drafts brushed their skin, even in the warm sunlight. The house had not forgotten them. It had marked them. And it would not stop watching. The family tried to continue living there. They stayed together. They prayed. They tried to ignore the sounds. They tried to pretend the shadows were only tricks of the mind. But every day, the entity became bolder. It knocked over furniture. It threw objects across rooms. It whispered in voices that sounded like their own friends and family. Sometimes, it screamed. Sometimes, it laughed. Carolyn felt it most of all. She could not sleep. She could not eat in peace. She felt invisible hands brush her face. She felt something press against her back while she was walking through the hallways. At night, she woke up to see a shadow standing at the end of her bed. Its presence was heavy. Its hatred was clear. The entity wanted her gone. It wanted her broken. The children were terrified. They refused to enter certain rooms alone. They hid under blankets for hours, trembling. They spoke in whispers about the shadows and the voices. "Mom, I see her," they said. "She's in the corner." Carolyn tried to comfort them. She told them it was nothing. She told herself it was nothing. But deep down, she knew it was not. Roger realized that they could not stay. They had tried to make the house a home. They had tried to ignore it. But the house had made its intentions clear. It wanted them gone. The only way to survive was to leave. Packing their belongings was terrifying. Every room seemed alive. Boxes would fall without reason. Doors slammed shut on their own. Windows rattled violently. Objects disappeared, only to reappear in strange places. The children clung to their mother, their small hands shaking. Carolyn felt her heart racing. She felt the presence behind them, trying to stop them from leaving. Every step toward the car was filled with fear. When they finally stepped outside, the cold air of the house seemed to follow them. They carried as much as they could in haste. Roger drove away quickly, never looking back. The farmhouse shrank in the rearview mirror, but the family could feel it watching, waiting, and remembering. Even miles away, they could not forget the house. The shadows, the whispers, the cold drafts, the memories lingered. Carolyn would wake up at night, convinced she felt a hand on her shoulder. The children had nightmares that seemed real. Every time a door creaked or a floorboard groaned, their hearts jumped. The house had left a mark on them that could not be erased. The Perrons found new homes. They tried to live normal lives. They laughed again. They played again. They tried to feel safe. But the memories stayed with them. They could never truly forget the farmhouse. They knew that it still existed. They knew that it still remembered them. The house still stands in Harrisville, Rhode Island. It looks quiet and calm from the outside. But the truth is, it never sleeps. It never forgives. It waits. It remembers. And anyone who moves in may face the same terror that the Perrons faced. The story of the Perron family is not fiction. It is real. It happened. Every shadow, every whisper, every cold draft in that house was real. And the haunting continues. Some houses have memories that never die. Some spirits have anger that never fades. And some places are better left alone. The Perrons survived. They escaped with their lives. But the farmhouse remains, and the haunting lives on. For those who dare to enter, the house is ready, watching, waiting, remembering. The story of the Perron family may have ended for them, but the house is still there, quiet from the outside, but alive inside, waiting, watching, remembering. Some say the farmhouse is empty now. Others say that anyone who enters can still feel the shadows, hear the whispers, feel the cold air brush their skin, even in the summer. The haunting did not die with the Perrons. It lives on, and it may be waiting for the next family to enter. If you thought this story was terrifying, remember, it is not fiction. It really happened. And there are houses like this all over the world. Places where the past never dies. Places where spirits do not forgive. Thank you for watching this true horror story. If you want to see more real-life hauntings, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell so you never miss a story like this. And remember, some doors are better left unopened. Some houses are better left empty. Some spirits never leave.